How alarming is this sequential decline in users?
Well, it's not a great surprise. I mean, they've warned us that the changes they made to the app last year had caused some disruption. And so it's not a great surprise that we saw a little bit of softness. I think the question from here that investors are asking is, can they return to growth and over what time period? They've also been struggling with the Android platform. User experience on Android is somewhat inferior to the iOS, and they've been working on re-platforming the app for Android. And it's in test right now, and we'll see if that has the impact of growing Android users, or returning the growth to Android users, both in the U.S. and globally. But as of now, they did slip sequentially, and now the big question is whether this trend continues.
Right, and David, you know, this isn't something that we saw at Facebook in the early days, or even Twitter. I mean, do you think Snap's best days could be behind it, given we're seeing a sequential decline fairly early in its life cycle?
Well, they have a problem that Facebook never really had, and to some extent Facebook tried to give to Twitter but never successfully gave them, which was they have a head-to-head competitor copying their every move, and that's Instagram. And that, I think, is slamming them. On the other hand, their ability to withstand that thus far, I think, is generally impressive, even though they did show this slight decline in daily active users. The fact that revenue is going up shows that advertisers, which is really the key constituency, are still pretty much happy.
So what about the revenue, Peter? We're seeing significant revenue growth. We're seeing that they are able to compete in a market where it's kind of a duopoly. What do you make of the fact that even though the user trends are not promising, the revenue is?
Revenue growth in the quarter was over 40%, and that's impressive. But when you dig a little deeper and you look at the regions, you see some trends that could signal some alarm. Revenue growth in the U.S. was 20%, and the question is whether that decelerates further. Revenue per user growth in the U.S. was only 12%, comparing to much higher growth in Europe and rest of world. So what investors are looking at is how much more room do they have? Keep in mind that Snap's business in the U.S. is only 3% the size of Facebook's, yet Facebook last quarter grew almost twice as fast. So really, you have a question here of what is the headroom on monetization per user, and is the actual design of the app an issue here, and is the demographic skew an issue here? That's what we think. That's our thesis, is that the youth skew of the Snap user presents a limiting factor on growth, and they have to expand the older users. And to David's comment earlier, Instagram is a key competitor, and they need more older users to open up the categories of advertisers that can spend significant sums on the platform.
Instagram is certainly a key competitor, also responsible for copying a lot of Snap's features and sometimes doing them better than Snap has. David, what do you think of that thesis, and whether Snap can actually succeed at getting older users?
Well, it's a tough challenge. I mean, they have done a good job with product innovation over time, even if every time they do anything it's copied by Instagram. They have been quite innovative. I wouldn't put it past them, because I think it's a well-managed, very creative company, that they might come up with some way to appeal to older people. But even the brand sort of just shouts teenagers and young people, so that to get older people to use it really would be more than even a product design change issue. It would be a branding issue, and it could turn off the younger people they still depend on. So that's challenging. The one thing, though, I don't think anybody should ever have any illusions. Snap is never going to be a scale of Facebook. It's a good company. It probably still has some potential growth, but don't think it is the next Facebook. It's never going to be.
Or even the next Twitter, potentially. I mean, Twitter has a couple hundred million users on Snap at this point. Peter, right, what should we read into Prince Al-Walid's investment here?
He makes a lot of investments. I don't frankly read too much into it, to be honest, at this point. The successive shares of Snap are going to succeed or fail based on the revenue growth, based on their ability to expand their audiences. They had a good quarter. They beat on revenue. They beat on EBITDA. We believe they'll probably turn positive, potentially in 2021. But what does the ultimate margin profile for this company look like? And what kind of revenue growth do you need to get there? That's the question. And what does the revenue growth in the U.S. look like a year from now, 2 years from now? Keep in mind, Facebook, so much larger, growing twice as fast in the U.S. Twitter, twice the size of Snap, growing a bit faster.